Greetings, warriors of the pre-apocalypse. Conspiracies have been popular these days. In fact, there's the number one topic trending video that I've seen on my feed today. It was called "The Conspiracy Theory of Conspiracy Theories." Like conspiracy theories are a conspiracy theory, right? Okay, but anyway, no, I've got one that nobody's ever talked about, and I totally made this one up on my own, okay? But I admit I made it up, but it's a theory. That's what you do. That's what theories are. You make them up based on what you've seen in the real world. Okay, so here's my new conspiracy theory, one you've never heard of. Okay, this is awesome. Check it out. All right, base Commodore conspiracy theory number one. No, 100. I've got a bunch of them, but that I've made up. But this is my favorite one as far as interesting, being interesting and not like depressing. Okay. So it goes like this. Okay. So all the music from like Elvis, like 1955 or maybe 1960 on to 1980, 85, 86, 87 maybe. Um, or 88, I think is probably when it ended. But all the like 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, those 4 decades uh, seem to be the time when all the best music came out. Okay, it came out of nowhere. Rock and roll came out of nowhere, seemingly, and then it evolved from in the 50s into something different. We had this whole different thing in the 60s. It was um, bear with me. This is all building up to something. Okay. So in the 60s, we had, a hippie kind of rock, I guess, what do you want to call that? Soft rock? I don't know. We had a lot of things come out in the 60s that were really nice. Um, and then in the 70s, we got, disco for the first time. And that was basically just an evolution of what we had, it seemed like. But it was a whole different genre, and it died. I remember whole mobs saying "kill disco." They were so sick of it. After like 10 years of that, and when we started the '80s, and then the '80s, of course, were diluted with cocaine, so we got a lot of crazy stuff in that time. But it was all good. It was all really good stuff. And Led Zeppelin is a good example of what I'm about to try to explain. Okay, there was a song called, in particular too, called "The Battle of Evermore." Okay, and if you listen to this song, sure, it was probably inspired by the Lord of the Rings and all that stuff, because back then J.R. Tolkien released the rights. When he died, the family snatched him up again. But he said for a little while there in the 70s, the rights of the Lord of the Rings were open to anybody who wanted to use it. And so a lot of rock stars used it, and Led Zeppelin jumped on the train. And yeah, they've got a lot of songs that sound a lot like Lord of the Rings. But the Battle of Evermore doesn't really have that Lord of the Rings. Nothing seems to coalesce with Lord of the Rings. But it definitely sounds like it was written 1,000 years ago. I mean, it really does. It has a lot of. It's even got an instrument in it called the hurdy-gurdy, which is over 1,000 years old, and so it just seems like that term Pandora's box. Even this new, finally, when the record industry got tired of losing money from Napster and free downloads on the internet, they started this thing called Pandora, which they can play ads on. It's basically just a radio. They play ads and stuff, and you don't really pick out your songs. They pick them out for you based on a genre that you like. So that sounds like the record industry, what they wanted a long time ago. They finally figured out how to monetize their, music, because and what did they call it? Pandora. Okay. which is, of course, they got the name from Pandora's box. And I believe, okay, now a lot of the record industry is all controlled by the Jews, and they started it. They started it, and they still own it all, and it's crumbling. We're watching it sink into the tar right now. It's like up to its knees in tar, and it's scrambling and grabbing. They're pulling each other down into it. So yeah, so it's the dinosaur industry, but it's controlled by the Jews. Okay, now the Jews came over here around the 20s and 30s, and all of a sudden they exploded onto the media scene in Hollywood. They created Hollywood and all this stuff, and they also made this record industry. Okay, and so they, a lot of shenanigans goes on in the record industry. You can just tell they're all addicted to drugs. They die. They all seem to die horrible deaths way too soon. And it's just a dog eat dog nasty business where fruit on my face, where it's just filthy, seedy industry. So it's not a big surprise that my conspiracy is true, and here it goes. Okay, here's the meat of it. I believe that some Jewish people found a thing called Pandora's box. It was probably one of them. Pandora was probably one of them, and she was this great gypsy, and she had collected all this music for hundreds and hundreds of years, passed it down from generation to generation, and she was basically the head gypsy, and she would make other people famous by giving them music to sing and teaching them how to sing it, and the tricks of captivating people and all this stuff. And I believe she kept it all in a box, and they called it Pandora's box, and it probably was called that for hundreds of years after Pandora died, like maybe 1,000 years, who knows, even longer than that. There's this box full of magical information on how to entertain and captivate people's attention and entertain them. And so they used that. They traveled Europe. They got kicked out of every country in Europe because they're greedy, but they learned how to come into a new country and make a little bit of money entertaining people on that level, and then they parlayed that money into something, and then they got into politics and blah blah blah. But they would start out in gypsies, entertaining people. And so I believe that the record industry ran out of stuff to do. Pandora's box has been, they've given out all the information. Like, they would make people famous. I think that's why there was a lot of one-hit wonders, and even the most famous bands, they make a couple really good songs, and the rest of it was total crap. Even Led Zeppelin, to me, was like that. Every band was like that. They'd have 2 or 3 good songs on an album, and the rest of it was just stuff that the band made up, and it was crap, right? Compared to these beautiful sounds and lyrics and vocals and chords and melodies that just, like, how did they come up with this and then not do anything else like it? Like, you know what I mean? And people that were really good musicians seem to die really young lives, like Randy Rhoads and Jimi Hendrix, people that could actually create this kind of stuff on their own. Anyway, that's my theory, is that there's this thing called Pandora's box, and a bunch of Jews were using it, and they created what we know as the record industry, and that's why it's crumbling, because they've run out of ideas. Pandora's box is now, dried up. They've used every trick in the box over and over and over and over. Trick in the book. Maybe there's a book in there. Maybe there's a couple books. Anyway, that's it. That's my cool conspiracy. Pandora's Box Conspiracy by Michael North. Peace out, bros.